Melissa, like that.
Okay.
Steve's here.
Ron Stanko.
I'm here.
Mike Herb will be absent. Tom McKeon.
Here.
Eric Ostencheck will be absent. John Woodward.
Here.
Fred Vogel.
Here.
And Scott Miller.
Here. Okay, public comment.
If I can say a few words, Adrian Jadick, Wyomissing. First of all, the documents that were presented on the website do not include any letter from McCarthy Engineering. So it defeats any purpose to have a public comment portion of the meeting when we don't know what we're commenting about. So for that, I would urge you to table these motions. I think that the public needs to understand not only what the companies are asking for, but also what our engineering is proposing. Again, just the fact that we have just one comment left at council, that's clearly not enough. The public needs to be part of the conversation, not part of the decision, or just to have a say before the decision. So the other thing is regarding R.M. Palmer. I was at the zoning, and it wasn't clear. It wasn't made clear by R.M. Palmer how they are not expanding production. That is an expansion. And clearly they moved all the production from West Reading to Wyomissing. And how is that not an expansion of the Wyomissing facility? Again, I read briefly through all the items A through whatever it is, I, and I see a lot of items that we're waiving. Why are we waiving sidewalk? The zoning asked for landscaping. I don't see any of that. Again, everything is a mystery. We're just approving stuff. We're rubber stamping something that we don't understand what we're rubber stamping. Are we respecting what are we talking? There's no talk about what the zoning asked for. The zoning hearing board. So again, I am concerned about expanding production, and about the effect that will have to the residents straight across. It's a residential area straight across from R.M. Palmer, and we know what happened in West Reading. How are we protecting those people? We already have the discussion with the 18-wheeler that's parked over there. How are we stopping this? How is the new development gonna prevent more 18-wheeler traffic on Van Reed? None of this is discussed. So I don't think this is the right way to do it. It looks to me that this has been pushed through, hoping to get a quick rubber stamp and get on with it. So we should not do these types of approvals.
Thank you very much. First item on the agenda is 15 Innovation Way, Lower House Island LLC. So who's opening the stage? Councilman McCarthy, do you have any opening comments?
I think the main items that were open last time are still open.
The last time was February, wasn't it? We didn't have a meeting.
Correct.
So, and they said they would have everything done in 30 days.
Yeah, and I'm here on behalf of Innovation Way. Sorry, I'm sitting behind you.
Sorry.
But I'm here because I think we got a review letter today from Mr. McCarthy earlier today, and it looks like the actual engineering aspects of the plan are clean. I mean, I don't know if you would agree with me, Jim, or if you think there are standing issues from an engineering perspective, but I think from the two items at least that I think are issues that remain are two items. The first being the requirement or something from Norfolk Southern The exact condition is the applicant shall obtain approval for stormwater discharge from Norfolk Southern if required. And I understand that his note says that nothing has been submitted to satisfy that condition, and that's true. And the reason that I'm here today is because I believe that this is not something that can be required. Norfolk Southern is a private third-party landowner. The requirements to go through the land development process are that the engineer looks at this borough's subdivision and land development ordinance, and it decides, that engineer decides what is required by the ordinance. The condition itself just says if required. Well, required by who? Norfolk Southern doesn't have the authority to approve or deny any sort of land development plan or stormwater management plan, which is basically what this condition is asking them to do. So from that perspective, we believe it's atypical, and we believe that if the borough itself required some sort of stormwater easement under the saldo, under what's contained in your ordinance, then sure, we would be required to do that. But that's not what this condition says. It places the impetus on a third-party landowner, and that's not what the land development process is meant to do.
I think the comment refers to the same thing as if you're discharging to a PennDOT right away, you have to have PennDOT permission to discharge it. It's a discharge to the Norfolk Southern right away, which was discussed which was talked about specifically at the conditional use hearing when that condition was put in place.
So with PennDOT, yeah, because that's part of the ordinance. I mean, is there something in the subdivision and land development ordinance that says we would have to get
I
that
think
permission from Norfolk Southern?
the time to dispute and appeal that was a conditional use hearing or 30 days after written decision, not now,
I
2.5
agree
years
with you.
later.
This was a condition of the conditional use decision. It wasn't appealed, and I believe the nature of the condition was to ensure that we weren't cooperating in a trespass on Norfolk Southern by allowing an increase in stormwater discharge onto Norfolk Southern. Now, one thing I did want to ask Jim about from your email that you sent a couple days ago was whether this is being treated the same way as other developers in that neighborhood. And my understanding had been from our prior discussions that there was something different about this stormwater discharge compared to the other developers in that neighborhood. But I was hoping Jim might be able to clarify, is this stormwater pipe that this developer wishes to tie into also connected to any other developers that have recently done development in that neighborhood, or is it?
There was no other work done that flowed prior to this proposed work that would alter the flow to that existing pipe.
Okay.
This project is altering and directing additional area to that pipe that didn't previously go there.
Okay, so
The prior VF North work didn't impact any pipes that flowed to the railroad right away.
Okay, that was my understanding, and so I just wanted to get it out
And this is
there.
the same thing on the Windsor Townhouse project that we required them to do, to the railroad right away there.
Okay, and what did the developer do in that situation with regard to the discharge to Norfolk Southern? Did we require them to provide some confirmation?
They designed their system so it didn't go to Norfolk
Okay,
Southern.
all right, so that's what occurred in that situation.
Right.
So in other words, there is no one who has discharged to the Norfolk Southern Railroad that we have given permission to do so. I mean, we're not treating this developer in some different way than we've treated any other developer where the facts were the same.
I guess I'm not sure. My understanding is that there are other developers and landowners in that complex who use the exact same storm pipe for their drainage that goes onto the Norfolk Southern property, and none of them were ever required to get any sort of.
All right, well then we have a difference of understanding about the facts. I mean, I'm relying on the borough engineer and his understanding and explanation to me of the facts. So unless there's some evidence.
I can help you a little bit with your facts. there is, in this case, there was 3 existing pipes that took the discharge to the Norfolk Southern right of way. By the time we're done and detaining the water and actually having it go out less than what it is today, we're down to just 1 discharge point, not 3. So we've actually had a reduction of the discharges, which is positive to the way Norfolk Southern would look at things. They've just been very slow to respond. We've been working with them for 8 months. Clearly, they're aware of the situation. There's been legislative help to try to get them to respond, and they've noted that it's at the right people, but that they really just don't have time to respond.
They've also said that they've never had this kind of request before, and they're not even sure who they take it to ask. You know, what,
I can't do that.
and
That's, all right. Well, if this were the only issue that was remaining for this plan to be released and recorded, I would propose to the planning commission that we would ask for some indemnification
I was just gonna suggest that.
from any liability that might result from us consenting to a trespass onto Norfolk Southern. But because there are some other things here that need yet to be done, and since you have pending with Norfolk Southern a request for what the borough has asked for, I guess I'm still inclined to say, let's get everything else done, and if you still haven't heard from Norfolk Southern at that time, then I would propose that we resolve that last remaining outstanding issue with an indemnification agreement. But I'm not sure that we're at that point, because there's other stuff on this review letter that has not yet been satisfied.
Okay, so, and we can circle back to the Norfolk Southern issue, because I agree that if we were asking for some sort of recommendation for conditional final approval, either based on receiving something from Norfolk Southern or having an indemnification agreement approved by the borough solicitor, I think that would be a good resolution. Otherwise, we would probably have to go back to council and ask them to waive the condition they already placed on the conditional use approval, which, you know, could be another recommendation that's made depending on what the planning commission wants to do. If there's an indemnification agreement included. The other issue I think that you're hinting at is the sewer expansion agreement issue. Is that,
Well, we are expecting that agreement to be signed and the required payment be made before the plan would be finally approved and released. So
well,
if you have something to say about that, I'd like to hear about that. But that's not the only thing. I mean, we still have this soils issue, which I think is another outstanding issue, unless Jim has some update on that that I'm not aware of.
We had submitted that 3 months ago, and we don't have a response back from the professional that was picked to do that review for you guys.
I agree, that's my understanding of the status, but until that's resolved, I can't recommend that planning commission move the plan forward. I think we need, I mean, I don't know what the reason for the delay is.
Liberty is looking for a copy of the Act 2 closeout that they were trying to get from the DEP research because it was not submitted by the applicant. So I had spoken with them last week and said, if you're still unable to get it, please issue your review letter hopefully before our meeting today and ask the applicant to provide that.
is there, I mean, you know, I've seen it before that obviously the plans would never get signed and released and recorded until that condition would be met. I mean, I think that you can do a lot with conditional approvals by saying, okay, we're recommending conditional approval, and once that occurs, then we can get the plans stamped and sealed and signed and released, just like the escrow agreement, or sorry, the sewer expansion agreement and the funding of that. My client's not gonna fund $235,000 prior to even having borough council give their, grant a
Well,
conditional approval, and that's typical for every improvements agreement.
Yeah, so I'm not, I mean, I was hoping you would tell us what the status was, but, you know, if the status is he'll sign it and pay what's expected.
Absolutely.
When the plan is conditionally approved, and that's one of the conditions, I mean, I'm okay with that.
That's absolutely what our intent was.
Okay, but with regard to the soils issue, My concern would be that I have no idea what the results of that feedback might be, and I don't know if they would affect the layout or even the feasibility of this development. So the soils analysis is something that I think is different than an improvements agreement, an indemnification agreement, a pump station contribution agreement. It's really goes more to whether the plan can be approved.
I understand, and I'm actually sort of not working on that portion, that's more of an engineering thing, I don't do the soils. But, I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know if you can speak to it.
I can understand that position if it was a soils pile that was contaminated that nobody ever knew about or ever touched before. But since it was actually relocated material, it's proven that it can be permitted once to be moved to the location where it's at. And all we're doing is getting the permission to relocate it to a different location on the same site.
So it's already been
So,
done.
so it's already been done before, so it clearly can be done again.
You change the use of the property, and there's different standards for non-residential, Act 2 closure versus residential. And now that you're putting residential on there, it brings up a whole host of different contamination levels that are only present for residential uses that are not in existence for non-residential uses. So your Act 2 closure said the soil would remain on site in an encapsulated manner for non-residential use. Now you're doing a residential use, you now open up all the residential environmental criteria. And I don't claim to be the expert on that, but I'm talking to the borough's consultant on that.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense, but do you have any idea of the time frame for when they're gonna be able to get us a response?
Well, if you can provide, I told him to get that piece of missing information over to you. What do you need? I figured you could get it from the seller, or maybe you have it in your files.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
It's just the first that we're hearing of the request.
I heard about it Friday afternoon when I called and asked him where his review letter was.
Yeah,
Because we furnished what the borough had on file to them.
so you
A
need the
month
Act
ago.
2 closure documents. Is there someone
There's
that
this-
you've been in touch with directly from Liberty?
It's Jim Sinelli's the one doing the review, the president of
No,
Liberty.
He works for them. Or I work for him.
That issue I wasn't aware was outstanding. I was here to talk about the sewer expansion agreement and the Norfolk Southern issue, but
I agree, I thought we had only the legal issues to talk about today. I didn't know the soils was a conversation.
Well, it's an outstanding issue, and it's been an outstanding issue. I agree that it's been with the borough consultant, but I didn't know what the issue was in terms of turning that around. So, until the borough receives that analysis from its environmental consultant, I don't know that we can move past that topic on the review of it.
Who is our environmental?
It's Liberty
Liberty.
Environmental.
Liberty Environmental.
Cincinnati's good.
Yeah, Jim's actually doing the review himself.
yeah, we're just concerned about the length
Because
of
it's
time.
Chris Kern,
Obviously.
Why would it take 90 days to look at that?
he hasn't had it 90 days. He got it February 3rd.
Okay. 60 days. I don't understand why, I don't understand why it would take that long. I mean, you have to tell me, I don't understand how things work in that world.
I don't know. I know that Chris Kern, who had done their prior reviews for them, had left the firm. So that's why Jim's finishing it. So,
Okay.
It's just getting to the point where this might not be economically feasible to, have this property sitting here and not being developed for what it's been 8 months. And I understand that some of it is, I get
years?
some of it are things that we need to do, I get that, but we're almost there and it's getting to a point where, the applicant really just needs some finality.
Is there another group other than Liberty that could do it? Say,
you probably don't take more time, but
Jim,
if you want to switch to
did,
somebody else, you can. It's up to council.
you know,
did
wanna send
Liberty
it
already
somewhere else?
respond once to the environmental? Did we get
Well, they
some-
responded a bunch, they've written several letters over the last year and a half on the environmental.
Right, so this was the only item that was opened in the last submission? Because I
No, there
know
were
we've got
several-
letters back in middle of last year, we've gotten correspondence.
There was letters they sent, I think, in August and September, August or September.
Right,
But that letter was requiring a lot of the information that's being requested as part of the report. I think there's things that are still missing from the report, from the soil remediation plan, the testing methodology they weren't happy with, but he was trying to get this one other report that he actually thought may help your cause, but he wasn't able to find it in his DEP file review. And
Well,
the
we're
borough
happy to
had,
provide them with whatever they need, I wasn't aware that they were asking for things.
well, neither was I till Friday when I asked him where his review letter was, so we could try and get everything out. And we held our review letter till today, hoping he was gonna get us his over the weekend, and we could get you everything this morning. But it didn't come in, and I left a message, and he wasn't in.
So the items that we discussed up until now, except for this, is there a meeting of the minds with those items, assuming this soil issue gets resolved?
Sounds like it.
Well, I mean, the sewer issue council said that they weren't signing any planning modules until the agreements were signed and paid. So council's gonna have to go back on that decision if that's what we're doing here, or somehow, with this approval, make that a condition that they can pay later. But that was the decision made.
The planning commission may be able to expedite that process if in fact we're having this conversation and it looks like you're okay with what we're doing from one perspective and they're okay what you need from another perspective, except for the soil issue
Just-
and the outstanding
Just
items.
so I'm clear, so what we would be agreeing to, say we were in a position to grant conditional plan approval and council would be acting on that tomorrow night. On the other side of council saying, yes, conditional plan approval is granted, a check for, it's $135,000, not two. And the agreement are being signed and turned over, cause I sent the last version of that agreement March 6th, and this is the first I've heard this was the intent. I mean, we didn't get a yes, we're in, no, we're out, nothing.
No, it's always been the intent. My client was under the impression that he was gonna be required to pay those funds and sign that agreement prior to this body giving a recommendation for conditional plan approval. He'll pay the money and he'll sign the agreement as soon as Borough Council gives final conditional approval. Conditioned on him doing that, and if he doesn't do it, then he doesn't get to build. But he's absolutely, yes, the amounts are good, the agreement's fine.
And how are you handling the planning module?
I'm sorry?
Okay, do we need the DEP, do we need something from DEP in response to a submission of the module by the borough before we can satisfy a saldo requirement for plan approval?
Yes, because you have no sewer capacity, no
Right.
sewer
So there's,
capacity at the property.
so we have a little bit of a chicken and egg issue in that regard.
Now, it's an exemption in this case, but it, rather than, because Greg's office submitted a year or so ago a full module, but we were sitting on that to not go through all that paperwork processing and costs in hopes that we could do this as an exemption. And with the Van Reed Apartments pulling out, that will allow us to do these improvements and keep it under the criteria where we would need a full part two, which would require a full planning module for all the developments, not just Kevin's project. So that's probably taking a year and a half out of the timeline and a bunch of aggravation for everybody. So, but we do need to get a sewage planning module exemption process signed off by Michelle and sent in to DEP, and then DEP acknowledging back that they concur with the exemption and sewer planning is done for the property.
Well, I'm gonna take a risk and make a suggestion. If your client, Kelsey, were willing to sign the agreement and deliver the payment, and it would be held in escrow pending the conditional approval of the plan, or even the recording of the plan. I mean, and the condition of the escrow would be that we give that check back, or the payment back to the developer if for some reason the plan doesn't move forward. That would enable the borough to submit that DEP
Exemptions.
planning module and get that out of the way without violating the terms of what, according to Michelle, council had previously decided it was the way it was gonna handle this particular issue.
So you're saying that you would want, and again, I think we're back to where I thought we were before I stepped into the room today. You're saying that the planning commission wouldn't even recommend granting final conditional approval until and unless he agrees to put the money in escrow and sign the agreement. I mean, cause I'm not sure, so you need that to occur before you can
Well, that's what we were just talking
get,
about with
I'm
this,
just not sure how they
with
both
this,
can be
this
conditions.
module, I mean, you know, in order for you to satisfy the Saldo requirement, you have to have sewer capacity for the project. And we can't say there's sewer capacity until the module has been approved by DEP, or the exemption has been approved by DEP. And so, again, it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg, where unless we have the commitment to fund the pump station upgrade that your client needs to contribute to, we can't say that there is capacity. And if we can't check the box on that exemption and submit it to DEP saying that there's capacity, we can't get the DEP approval, which is needed in order to satisfy the Saldo requirement to approve the plan. So there's a chain of connections.
I
What
understand,
if-
but if my
what
client's
if-
plan doesn't get approval from,
Yeah.
Well, that's,
What if you said, within 5 business days after DEP's acknowledgement of the planning module exemption approval, then they would have to
okay.
post that 135, or whatever that number is. Would,
Well, I guess their concern is that for some reason the plan's not gonna get approved. And, you know, so, but the sewer planning is part, you know, sewer, the capacity.
council would have to let Michelle sign that without the money, was
Yeah,
the key
that's
in
why I was
that.
suggesting you put the money in escrow with the borough, and then we give the money back if the plan goes away for some reason. That way, you know, if we had the money in escrow, we could say that the capacity is gonna be there, and we can move that exemption document over to DEP.
yeah, I mean, if we entered into some sort of escrow agreement, a short, simple one where he gets the money back if there's any issue within a certain amount of time, I don't think that the client would have a problem with that. Maybe council would look a little more favorably on the Norfolk Southern issue. You know,
Well,
if you were to agree to do that, cause I mean, really, he's paying money for something that he's not guaranteed to get, and that money's just not in his
well,
pocket.
it wouldn't make sense for us to keep the money if your project goes away for some reason.
I agree, but it's still money that he could be earning interest on somewhere else,
But, you know,
and we're not sure how much
so,
longer it's
but
gonna
there
be.
has to be a short timeline.
Nothing better.
I don't know if that would make them not
The
comply
letter
with
of
Saldo and DEP. They might need to show
Well-
the funds sitting somewhere,
Well, you know, the other part of this is that,
somewhere.
you know, your client has a goal to actually begin construction, not just get a plan approval. And in order for him to be able to have units that can be occupied, we need to do this pump station upgrade. And unless we actually have the money in hand to pay for it, we're not gonna actually do the pump station upgrade. So there is a, you know, there's a timing thing here that is difficult.
I agree.
I don't disagree with the timing in the escrow. I'm just trying to get expedited information so I can respond to it. 3 months for Jim to get back to us, not Jim, Jim Sinelli. Him and I talk, we're friends for years. We're trying to all get to the finish line together. But if I don't have something I can't give to him, then it creates, again, we're relying on these third parties again to control our timeline, which neither of us are benefiting from that. So at some point, of course, we want to start the project, but I just didn't want to come back in 3 months and we're both talking about
We're still talking about the soil and,
some kind of soil test
trying
that I
to figure
can't
out
even get my
who's-
hands on because the clients didn't give it to me when I bought the property. Yeah. So I agree with what she made a point about. If it has to go on escrow to get everybody on this, get this moving, that's what we have to do.
Well, I would feel better about the borough signing that exemption document with DEP if we have an escrow of the funds and we have a signed agreement. And if we have that in hand, then I would say we should just go ahead with that DEP submission right away.
I have a question.
Here's what Sinelli's exactly looking for. He is looking for the report for parcel 9, which was done in 2018 and includes the berm, Teleflex, and Drexel. That's what he can't find. He has the report done in 2016 for VF parcels 1 through 8, or 1 through 6, and 8, but he doesn't have that one. So if that's something you have or can get,
Yeah,
that
so
would probably. And I just checked. Friday I actually emailed. I emailed him on the 4th and said, "Can you get this? Can you put this in a letter? Regardless, have us the letter today or Monday before the planning commission meeting."
So what was the
Jim?
first one again, Jim? I'm sorry, the first one? It was 2 reports, I want to make sure.
The first report that he has is, he has the 2016 report for VF parcels 1 through 6 and 8. Michelle had that in the borough records. He's looking for a copy of the report for parcel 9, which was done in 2018 and includes the berm, Teleflex, and Drexel.
It's parcel 7.
Don't even ask me how they numbered those parcels over there.
I actually think that's one of the parking lots.
Question about the sewer agreement. So let's just say, for example, Kevin funds an escrow account with the 135, which allows you to not feel weird about submitting that request to DEP without actually having the funds. And council decides they're gonna deny these plans because of X, Y, or Z. How does that affect your ability then to move forward with the DEP? I mean, now you don't have the money,
Well,
but
if
the
there's-
units
if
aren't gonna
there-
be.
Well, we're not gonna do any work on that pump station unless the escrow's gone away and we actually have the money in, our possession.
Well, that's not entirely true. We still need to upgrade that pump station for our own needs. We would not be adding.
Winwood.
No.
Right, yep.
It'd just be less of an expansion.
Yeah, I mean, we would, if for some reason your project went away, we're gonna, have to re-examine the pump station upgrade again. I mean, I think that would be necessary. But we're not going to, we may do a pump station project, but it won't be the same pump station upgrade project that we would do if the Boyle House Island project is part of the mix.
So you'd have to amend your module request and stuff with DEP at that point, or whatever. Okay.
Or we withdraw it. We would,
Yeah.
if you didn't go forward with your project, we would send a letter to DEP saying the project hasn't gone forward.
Right. So
Um,
we would just undo that submission to DEP.
Right.
So just for my benefit and the benefit of the developer, there's 3 issues. One's this escrow, one's the soils, and the other is we can work around the Norfolk Southern Railroad Indemnity Agreement.
Well, what else is there?
Is that it?
I think those are the 3 big.
Those are the 3 main issues. They're the 3 big issues.
It's a little educated.
Well,
What are the
why
other
don't we wanna get all those other issues
Yeah.
resolved?
Because a lot of them would be conditions for,
Well, what we would need to do is to go through the McCarthy letter dated April 4 and talk about all of the items that are listed in that review.
So I mean, everything else is typically, it's perfunctory conditional plan review subject to, it would be the
Right.
cleanup items, Chris. It's nothing that necessarily the PC needs to weigh in on.
Okay.
And traffic plan and designs letter, they're all satisfied with everything.
Architect is fine with the landscaping and
Architect is
lighting.
fine with everything. Most of the remainder of our letter deals with signature seals, agreements, those type of standard issues.
Okay.
It's really just the open conditions from the conditional use hearing, which is right there.
So does everybody know what they have to do, and by what time they have to do it, so that their expectations are fixed?
yeah, I mean, I think my understanding from this conversation today is that, my client is ready and willing to pay that money into escrow and sign the agreement. I guess, I mean, are you asking that that be done now or after the planning commission recommends final conditional approval? I guess I'm a little I'm just not sure when exactly you want that to occur.
I think we'd be fine. I mean, I think we're all on the same page that the hope is we're meeting next month, hopefully, with an actual motion for conditional plan approval. I would be fine, unless you tell me there's a timing issue, waiting until that window between the planning commission meeting and council. Or I would even say, you know, if we're really planning it that close, the week of council. Council's on a Tuesday, by Friday close of business that same week.
Okay, that's fine, I'm on board with that. But I guess the issue that, I guess we're not asking for a motion today because of the soils issue, and hopefully that can get resolved in the next 30 days before the next planning commission meeting, and then we can
That's true.
actually ask for a motion.
Right.
Everybody happy?
So we gotta get Sinelli to kick loose his letter, but he needs some document from you to finalize his review. We'll see what Sinelli says and see if that creates any new problems that we're not aware of.
Essentially, his other concerns were that the report didn't specify that all soil had to be removed from any construction equipment or vehicles prior to leaving the site, so the contamination wasn't spread. And this report itself did not state the number of discrete samples that were required. So it was those two things he said and that report.
Okay.
There was a report that was required on how to handle the material. Is that
That's what he-
absent to that report? It wasn't in the report that we provided to you?
Right.
We had to hire an engineer.
Those
to
two
do like
items
control.
weren't addressed in that
Okay.
report.
All right.
That's, you know, he didn't issue his letter because of the other thing. I don't know why he didn't send what I just said, these two things, and I need that report, but.
So everybody should call Sinelli to see if there's.
Everybody. Right.
Well, I think if we get that report and email it to Jim or send it to me and I'll get it to Jim. I don't care. Get me the report. I'll get it to Jim. But we looked through our files and Michelle looked through the borough files and we don't have the one he's looking for.
Alright,
Okay,
so
so
we'll
again,
try
it
to
was
get that.
clean off the machines, and what was the other, what?
It's not the testing.
It was remove all the soils from equipment before, all equipment and vehicles before it
It's
left
the
the
number of
site.
tests, I think. he
And
did,
it
right?
specifically said it did not state the number of discrete samples. Here it is. In section 4, paragraph 5, section 4, page 5, fourth paragraph, needs to indicate the number of discrete samples that will be collected from the underlying soils. And then the other comment specifically states, in section 3, add a statement that all visible soils shall be removed from excavation equipment prior to leaving the site. So,
Okay,
might be
thank
better.
you.
If they make those two changes and get them the report, maybe that,
Can you forward that over? Might be helpful to have it in writing so we all know what we're working on. We didn't get
who wants it?
You can send it to me, I'll be the point person. Get these guys
Let's see if I
organized.
have your, I know I have Greg's email and stuff, I don't have yours. Oh, there you are, John. Alright. Alright, I sent Kelsey, you and Greg.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
So other than facilitation, do we have to do anything other than?
I think we're just asking you to table it for this meeting and we'll come back in 30 days, hopefully with an answer to the soil issue, and we'll at that point be asking for a motion.
Do we need a motion to table?
Jim, can you explain the non-residential Act 2 closure versus the residential?
Sure.
Because they're two different standards.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of health level standards that apply to residential properties.
Right.
For obvious reasons. People are living there, growing up, kids are there,
Yeah.
playing in dirt, eating dirt, you know, like we used to. I don't know if they do that. Millennials might not do that in Gen Z, but we grew up eating dirt growing up.
Yeah.
So they actually,
Delco, we ate.
yeah, Delco we ate dirt. Probably still do down there. So basically, they determine, at this level, if a child digests so many ounces of dirt over their lives, that this concentration will kill them. So there's a residential standard for, in this particular, the concern is arsenic, in specific on this property and the material in the berm. If you're not doing residential, the arsenic level doesn't fall under the non-residential health standard. Therefore, as part of their Act 2 clearance, to do things on residential, you have to go to a higher level, whereas non-residential it just has to be contained, because they're not expecting somebody in an office building to be digging a hole to get down to arsenic like kids dig holes. So there's things that have to happen in non-residential, has to be encapsulated by asphalt or concrete, buried down a set distance, because I think the Act 2 for the non-residential setting had to have a 2-foot impervious cap on top of it for the long-term disposal, or be embedded in some type of pile. And I believe what Jim is saying is the report in 2018 that amended the Act 2 prior report is the one he doesn't have to analyze, was everything done correctly with that pile. It may not so much be a Kevin thing, but if they did something incorrectly, he's concerned about liability rolling on to Kevin for something that Kevin didn't do. And obviously wants to protect the, I think at the end of the day here, I think we all want to just protect the residents of these apartments and their children is really the thing. And I know council was concerned and wanted to make sure all the I's were dotted and T's crossed in this regard, knowing that it was contaminated material.
So, knowing this is residential now, does that create a problem potentially?
Well, they have to, their proposal is to remove all that material and put it at the boiler site.
Okay.
And the report and Jim Sinelli's comment was, when they said, okay, all the material that was brought here that's not virgin to this area is removed, we have to test the existing soil underneath that to make sure that that meets the residential health standard for arsenic.
Okay.
And that was his one comment about the number of, discrete samples, just minimum number per that area that they're gonna take.
Okay.
If they were putting a car wash there, they wouldn't need to mess with us.
It's be fine.
Right, it's just because it's residential.
So instead, I mentioned 3 conditions, now 5. Is that good for them to meet? Still 3? You said there were 2 more. including
Well,
the-
they're within the environmental.
Well, in the environmental report, those 2, I mean, I would assume that their consultants was gonna add those 2 sections, like,
Yeah.
they sound pretty germane.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they probably have the 2018 report.
Yeah, we'll get that, we'll be able to get that. Okay, thank you for your time.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
So
Thank you.
So we need
A motion to table.
a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second.
Is there a condition to this tabling, or just?
Put it back on the agenda.
So, all in favor of placing this on the agenda for next month for the house, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. See you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, apparently I sent you damn files? Did you see that email?
From
Alexa
Alexa.
sent a thing that said, I sent you and her bad video file.
I just asked for new files, what was in my report.
You missed a lot during this meeting.
Oh, yeah, that's why I was late.
Alexis is a piece of work.
Oh, I
Yes, she
didn't know.
is.
I don't really respond to her anymore.
Smart.
Okay, next up to bat is Brenda Candy World.
I had 2 weeks to report.
Thank you.
Actually, I'd like them to start and tell us what the difference, so if you remember, they were here a year or 2 ago, came in front, made a presentation, went to the zoning hearing board didn't like what they were doing, essentially, and didn't give them the variance, but my understanding is they scaled it back somewhat, and the zoning hearing board's given them the release they need to move forward with the project. I know that in that time frame, since they were at the zoning hearing board, they came forward with a plan to extend the sewer line on North Wyomissing Boulevard, which I think some was built, it was not done. So we knew this was coming, we just didn't know when, and Now it's here, so Terry, you wanna tell us what changed from the old to the new, or just tell us about the new?
Well, in essence, the plan's up here. Good afternoon, I'm Terry Noggle with Great Valley Consultants. With me is Bob Burkhart with Palmer. Just really quickly, in general, the plan got pulled back, or the end of the building back here got pulled back in so that it's compliant with the setback, so we don't have to worry about that issue. The parking lot and storm drainage all got reconfigured, and we increased parking from what was there before. In essence, that's what the change was. The reconfiguration of the parking and the change in the storm detention. So that's,
I would add to that, as part of the zoning hearing board approval, there were multiple conditions that were placed on the applicant.
Correct.
I've been in contact with Mark Schlott, who is the CEO of Palmer. Just as a reminder, there's one of those conditions, which is an annual report that has to be submitted to the borough regarding any calls made to their after-hours security, mainly complaints from the neighbors about trucks, employees, things like that. That first report will be due in August. Otherwise, they have been very agreeable to comply with those conditions.
yeah, I mean, definitely the applicant does desire to comply with all the conditions of the zoning hearing.
And it's not on here, but I know typically one of our conditions, I didn't know if it was.
Just to put it on there.
Yeah, is the conditions portion of the executed decision of the zoning hearing board must be added to the plan set.
Actually, I think that is on
I think,
page
One.
2.
yeah.
If you go to page 2, the existing conditions plan, up there, that whole section
Yep.
goes through all of the zoning variances that were granted and all the conditions. So it's on the plan.
So yes, you can see there were many.
Yeah. Yeah, and there isn't a disagreement about those. That's not an issue. There are a couple of waivers that we did request to be discussed. And those are the,
One was plan scale.
Which is
if I remember
common.
Right, which everyone needs, cause you drew it at 20 equals 20, the ordinance is 1 equals 50.
Well, first was, to submit a combined preliminary final.
right, submitted.
Which is also a
by
common.
preliminary and final.
Forgot that one, cause we do that every time.
Yeah, second one is the plan scale. The third one is to, in lieu of the traffic impact study, we have offered to do the fee in lieu of.
And they did already provide the estimate for the fee in lieu of, that was prepared by McMahon.
Right.
And it looks like they're saying it would be $9,200.
Is that waiver going in the ordinance?
Yeah. The fourth waiver is actually not so much a waiver, it's a deferment. We're requesting that the requirement for the sidewalk to be installed be deferred. And that, the time duration of that deferment is really up to discussion with the council.
Yeah, that has to be clear. I mean, I would say, if the planning commission is willing to consider the waiver, it has to be either until a specific event occurs in the future, or for a specific amount of time.
Can I ask why it's, what's the reason for wanting to defer it until at least after the building division is complete?
There's a number of, when we did the survey, we didn't topo all of the site. So there are a number of places where the ADA ramps and curbs and sidewalk need to be done that we don't have accurate topo on. So we would have to expend that time to get that all that done. It's not that we don't wanna do it, it's just that, it's just time. We didn't wanna hold up this plan. If we could, you know, defer that, then we could proceed with doing that while this is going through.
Would it be fair if there was a potential condition that it be deferred until the time you apply for a building permit? Or the certificate of
CO?
occupancy?
Or the CO, yeah. Yeah, I think it would be definitely before the CO.
Okay.
But can that information be incorporated into an as-built plan also?
Yeah.
I mean, I
We've
would
done
love
that
to see that
previously.
information appear on
Yeah.
a version of the plan that would be.
Recorded.
Are you you need MPDS or no?
No.
Okay.
And that, to be honest with you, the disturbance
That wasn't-
of the sidewalk would
put-
probably
might
take
put you
over,
over.
yeah, the disturbance limit, and
Right.
that's
No,
one of the reasons.
I was only
why
asking
we
because if
would-
you're doing that as-built, we could just record that as-built when you do your notice of termination, but if you're not in MPDS, then
Yeah,
you
that's.
just have to do it as-built.
Chris, would that be something that we would hold money for in reserve or
Or there'd
other
be-
credit that if the
Yeah.
It would be
sidewalks
part
were
of the
done and
improvements agreement,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I would say the costs of topo work and the construction of all the improvements would be part of the construction escrow that would be posted as part of the improvements agreement.
We did that for the Highlands. We actually had a separate
Yeah.
agreement solely for that, which I would think we could
For
do
the
for this too
sidewalk.
if we wanted to.
Remember that?
Yeah.
I do.
Is there any pedestrian traffic there, or what's the level of that's been measured as?
Are you talking about on Van Reed? Is that where you're,
Yeah.
that frontage you don't really, you don't have it the whole way, right? It's
No.
partial.
Can you
Right.
show the plan again?
Probably wanna go to the overall site
Do
plan.
you know what?
I wanna say it's either 3 or 5, I'm not positive.
Oh,
There it is,
yeah.
okay. So,
So you can see there's sidewalk on this side.
there's sidewalk here, but there's no sidewalk along Van
Along Van
Reed
Reed.
up there.
Here.
And I don't think, there's no sidewalk in the back, you know? Yes. Well,
There's here. There's on the back
it's
side.
on the other side.
Yes, there's no sidewalk on the southwest side of the property there.
So where would the sidewalk be built?
Along Van Reed
Van Reed only?
And then down here.
and then down there. Now, it wouldn't connect to anything down here. I mean, if you require us to do it, it would be just there, it doesn't connect to anything on that side.
I would prefer that we do it because we've made other people install sidewalk that connected to nowhere currently.
Not arguing, I just wanted to make everybody aware of that.
I mean, the hope is, Fred, eventually other things are gonna get redeveloped and then they're gonna have to do the same.
I understand.
Fix the curbs too.
Do
Are
you,
those all the waiver requests?
Well, the last one, number 5, is, has to do with the stormwater. The requirement for the 1-year plan, in order to drain it within the 24 hours, basically, I've got to read this. Due to the small size of the drainage area to the facility, the outlet orifice would have to be extremely small to attenuate the 1-year storm for a minimum of 24 hours. At that size, the orifice can get easily clogged. And that's why we're asking for a waiver for that.
It's not uncommon, they're gonna own the basin, not us, so if we were gonna own the basin, I'd say no, but they have to it's their maintenance item.
Is there any alternative way to do it other than with the standard design?
Not for these smaller interval storms that, you know, they're doing this a lot for the stream bank erosion, water quality components or ordinance, and it just requires a really small orifice, and then when you're only dealing with a small portion of the site, you know, if you make it any bigger, it won't work. the flow will be too high.
So you're okay with the waiver?
I am. Yeah, we've granted that waiver, several times, so different projects.
Okay.
So how many conditions do we have to,
Waivers.
for waivers?
Yeah, the waivers are all on the agenda individually.
D, E, F, G, H.
So we want to cite those to move to approving that bill.
Yeah, we're not asking for a plan approval at this time, we're just asking for a recommendation on the waivers to council.
All right.
There's a lot of other, things to clean up before we were asking for any plan approval.
I had the agenda ready long before, not throwing Jim's office under the bus, long before the
There they are.
review letter was done, which is why I always just throw on the blanket motion to approve, knowing that you can table it if we're not there yet.
Now, you mentioned that, when we talked about this all the time, the scaling,
Yeah.
instead of 1 inch to 50, you said 1 inch to 40, is that correct? In here, is it the 1 inch to 20?
The plan is at 1 inch, the plan is submitted is at 1 to 40.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I thought we were 120, but,
That's what it usually is.
yeah, because people blow them up, but.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, just want to make sure it wasn't a typo.
No, I'm sorry, I said 20, it said 40.
I went off of the actual letter when I did the agenda.
I'll make the motion to recommend the waivers.
That we use the waivers.
And that would be to grant all 5 waivers on the condition that they pay the fee in lieu for the traffic study, which is in the amount of
9,200.
$9,200. And that they will build the sidewalk and curb improvements before a CO is issued, show it on the as-built plan, and escrow the costs of the,
Improvement.
Mapping
the
and
topo and the construction.
Did you know that?
Is that,
I'll amend my motion then. accordingly.
So, do we need to?
but he's made a motion.
Second.
So we're good. So we have a second?
John seconded.
John second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, good.
And then to be similar to the first one, preferably a motion to table conditional final plan approval.
I'll make that motion as well.
Second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion is second, table of, plan.
Yeah, so this
Favor,
came
say
in.
aye.
Aye.
In
Opposed?
March.
We're good.
That's
Yeah.
really all we wanted
Monday
to
from
get out of today.
I just-
All right,
Obviously, we'll be back.
we'll be here.
So we table for the approval of next month, or it's gonna be longer?
I can't answer that question.
We were just talking about the 90-day NPC requirement would be 3 months from today.
It starts
so
today, so.
July.
That-
We'll see you hopefully before
Oh,
July
yeah,
in some
I-
capacity.
I just don't know that it will be in May.
That's fine.
But
Right,
it will
right, right.
definitely be.
I'm just curious, I wasn't putting undue pressure.
No, I-
Do we have any other, issues before the planning commission? Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Yeah, it's too much.
we adjourn.
Yeah, you do next Friday. Yeah. 18.
Oh, come on, Terry. You can do that. See, you can do